Welcome everybody to the Topanga Town Council's candidate conversation. We are delighted to have both candidates with us tonight. We have Councilwoman Lindsay Horvath and Senator Bob Hertzberg. I will discuss, or Jaspreet will discuss in a few moments how the format's going to be set up, but you are in for a very informative evening. Okay, so first a few things just to kind of get us grounded. I wanted to go ahead and introduce the board members so you know who all is on the Topanga Town Council, and then we will describe the format and go into and just give a brief description of the community. Then we'll go into our first session. Okay, so to begin, we have our board member with the longest tenure, Stacy Sledge. Stacy, I would ask you to say a quick hello and a wave so everybody gets to see you.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Awesome. Our next board member that I'd like to introduce is a board member emeritus. That is Tam Taylor. Tam, do you want to say a quick hello and quick wave? All right, Tam is not saying hello. Tam, you're muted. Okay. All right, so she's waving. There she is. We'll unmute her later. Okay, our next board member that I would like to introduce is Dr. Elisa Landhill. Elisa?
Hello, thank you for joining us.
Fabulous. Next up is Roger Pugliese. I think I said that correctly. Roger, you want to say hello and wave?
Hi, everybody.
Fantastic. Good. And then last but not least, Jaspreet Katrib, I'd like you to say a quick hello and wave your hand.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Awesome. Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to quickly introduce one of our co-hosts, James Grasso. He is a member of TCEP, SAGES, and a whole bunch of other organizations, and he really represents one of the most important pillars that we focus on here at the Topanga Town Council, and that's emergency management. And I think now would be a good time to say hello to Mr. Grasso, and he will also give us an update on what y'all are hearing overhead right now. All right, James.
Okay, thank you for being here. And yes, in particular for community members tonight, there's going to be 3 helicopters doing training. They're the Chinooks. There are LA County, Ventura County, and Orange County Fire Authority, and they're doing a training tonight off of 69 Bravo, the helispot that just sits right above Topanga Canyon. We're thrilled to have it, and we're thrilled that they're out there training this evening, and it will go on until 9 p.m. tonight. Thank you.
Yay. Terrific. Okay, so then I wanted to have Jaspreet, if she would for a moment, just go over the format so people know what to expect tonight and when we're going to be hearing from each candidate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. Tonight's conversation will be broken up into 2 roughly 45-minute segments, with each candidate having their own time to engage with the community. We will start with Senator Hertzberg and finish with Councilwoman Horvath. We will start with pre-selected questions from our panelists and then open it up to questions from all of the attendees. If you would like to submit a question for the candidates or the Topanga Town Council board during the event, please use the Q&A or the chat feature and our moderators will respond. Since we will be unlikely to get to all candidate questions tonight, we will collate the unanswered questions and submit them to both campaigns tomorrow. So we hope that you enjoy this sessions.
Perfect. Yay. Okay. Before we introduce our first honored guest, Senator Hertzberg, we want to take a moment to introduce Topanga. And we are going to read an outline that Tam put together, a little script, a kind of ode to Topanga that describes what this community is. So Tam, thank you. Topanga is a unique place in many ways, from the topography that sits it in the middle of a major state highway, to a vibrant art scene, to surfers, to seniors, and to everyone who chooses to live where being close to nature is more important than convenience or cachet. We are in a league of our own. We are a town with deep roots and an ethos of caring both for the land and one another. We stand on the shoulders of the generations who came before us, and we live by a creed of protecting, preserving, and promoting this canyon. Elisa?
It is a mammoth responsibility with no time off. And although the county is our official governing body, much of the work in this community is accomplished unofficially. by a rich assortment of nonprofit organizations and volunteers, many of whom are represented here tonight. The challenges that we face are legion, from high fire risk to environmental concerns, to development, housing and homelessness, to drought and water management, traffic, crime, building regulations, and to our seniors in need. And all these pressures are increasing rapidly, and they pose a threat to the very nature of our community.
Thank you. Stacy.
We're looking for a supervisor and a de facto mayor who will embrace the unique qualities of our canyon while aggressively working to ensure that we not only survive, but that we thrive. The Topanga Town Council and the myriad of volunteer organizations who grapple with the wide-ranging issues facing this community have developed over time and with much mutual effort, solid working relationships with the various state and county agencies who are responsible for Topanga's welfare. The Third District Supervisor is at the top of that list. So we welcome you to Topanga, and we're eager to have you get to know us as individuals and as a community. We hope that you will become as captivated by our town as others have before you. Once elected, we hope that you're ready to roll up your sleeves because we've got some work to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to the rest of the Town Council Board and to all of the nonprofits, the volunteers, the residents, and everyone who's joined us tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for listening. Okay, so now we are going to begin the breakout sessions with you. We're not going to break out into different rooms, but what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the Honorable Councilwoman Lindsay Horvath's team into the waiting room. Hello, Councilwoman Horvath. We're going to put her into the waiting room with her team, and then we're going to go ahead and get Senator Hertzberg's part started, and we'll do a little introduction, then he'll give an opening statement, then we'll start with the questions for our candidate. Okay, so give us about 60 seconds to do all that administrative organization, and then we'll move on. Thank you. And just as a note, a reminder to people who have audio privileges, if you could put yourself on mute when you're not talking, that would be great, because we all hear everything that's going on in the background, even if you don't think we do. So that would be terrific. All right, Elisa, how are we doing?
Just looking here. I need a minute. Sorry.
No problem.
I've put our councilwoman there. I am looking for Nick, and I'm not sure if is her full team here tonight.
I just saw
For
Nick.
Austin and Nick.
Austin may not be on.
Okay, let me move Nick then. Sorry.
All right, and then let me make sure that Senator Hertzberg, I'm going to send you a prompt, or James is going to send you a prompt asking you to unmute yourself. Can you? And then once we have that going, that'll be good. Hey, awesome.
Am I on?
Yes, you're good. Good to go. All right. So do we have everybody in the green room that needs to be in the green room?
Can you move Nick? I couldn't find his name. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll look for him. He may not be on, but in any case, I wanted to go ahead and start 9. Okay, good. We're running right on schedule. Thrilled. We're doing good. I wanted to go ahead and start with this doesn't count towards your time, Senator Hertzberg. This is so I wanted to go ahead and start with the introduction from Jaspreet of Senator Hertzberg, and then we will go to Senator Hertzberg opening statement.
Senator Bob Hertzberg served 14 years in the legislature from 1996 to 2002 and became Speaker of the California State Assembly. After that, he returned to private life and launched clean energy companies. He chaired the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation in 2004 and again in 2011. In 2014, he was elected to the state Senate from the San Fernando Valley and served as California's Senate Majority Leader from 2018 to early 2022.
Okay.
Gary.
Thank you. All right, so I didn't see Nick, so we've got everyone who is a member of Lindsay's team in the green room. Okay, so now that we've done the introduction, I would like to start Senator Hertzberg's time. We're going to start at 9:10 or 9:11. And then after about 43 minutes of Q&A, we will then give you about 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes to wind down your session and summarize what you want us to leave, the note you want us to leave on. And then we will take a minute or two to progress to the next session. All right, without further ado, we welcome you, Senator Hertzberg, and would love to hear why you think you're the best candidate for Topanga and how you plan to move us into the future.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, but let me tell you about who I am. And I think the most important thing about something like a conversation like this is to understand my character, who I am, what I'm about. I've been around in the political cycle for a while, in and out of government. I only served for a few years, quite frankly. Both I and my opponent served about the same time in terms of serving in government. But I think I want you to understand what I'm about. So I'm one of 5 brothers, born in Los Angeles, grew up in the West Side, actually in Benedict Canyon, and dealt with the fires, with the big fires in Bel Air when I was a kid, when my mom was packing everything on the station wagon and moving us out because we were scared about the fires, which has been an important part of my life and part of my psyche and all this stuff, because it just impacted me so much. My oldest brother has cerebral palsy, and we moved to Palm Springs because there was no special ed in those days. They put him only, and let him be the water boy on the football team, where he could have some dignity in his life. Just came back to Los Angeles. I'm a lawyer for many years, worked in all kinds of aspects of the law, and I've been an entrepreneur pretty significantly. But in addition, I've been a community activist. And this is what's important, I think, important both in terms of working in the job that I'm seeking and in terms of my character and who I'm about. I started out way back when as a young kid as a driver for a guy named Merv Dimely. He was the first Black lieutenant governor, going through all 58 counties of California. It was an unbelievable experience. Worked in South LA after him with Julian Dixon, Leon Ralph, Bill Green, Maxine Waters, a whole bunch of people that maybe you remember or don't remember. And then Mervyn appointed me the lieutenant governor to the chairman of the youth commission. I got very close to a guy named Victor Grego, who was kind of one of these activists on the East Side, working with Alatorre and Molina, and worked on probably 100 campaigns on the East Side. And I love the humanity of it all. I love the connectivity of it all. I was a big bridge builder between the Jewish community, Latino community, the Black community, and I also sat on the board of Chinatown Service Center. And I was in the American Jewish Committee and the like. But the core of it is a bridge builder. The core of it is worked in all corners of the county and built these deep personal relationships, not based upon making money, but based upon a sense of community commitment. And also, as it relates particularly to Topanga, the idea of being involved in the community on a face-to-face basis, not somebody who just does stuff indirectly with staff or other things. I'm very much a hands-on person. I was 42 years old when I decided to run for government. And the reason and I've been on a bunch of commissions and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But the reason I ran for government is I was frustrated at a bunch of things. I was really frustrated because I worked for so many people who were decent, honorable people. And I watched them just turn into dribble when they got into government. They got torn apart by the system. Oh, I want to stay in power. What do I do about this side or that side? And they haven't really figured out who they are. In our job, it's about your soul. It's about your essence. It's not about today waking up with one position and another. What are you about? And so one of the things that I did, there's a bunch of stuff I worked on in education and other fields, but the big thing I worked on was building what became the Robert M. Hertzberg Capital Institute to train members, over 5,000 staffers to train the system, and members, Democrats and Republicans. I became speaker, elected unanimously on both sides of the aisle. Why? I don't punk the other side. I don't necessarily agree with them. I don't have to agree with them, but they got elected and I believe in the Constitution. And one of the things I did is, normally you have this side of the aisle and that side of the aisle. I mixed everybody up. And then I left government because I was speaker during the energy crisis, and I was totally possessed by the energy issue, by climate change. And I saw I worked on the renewable portfolio standard and the tailpipe emission standard with Fran Pavley and all those things we got passed that I was able to do. But so what I did is I formed a solar company in South LA on Martin Luther King Boulevard. I used to call it Martin Luther King in Alameda, where opportunity met social justice. I took it public in the United Kingdom. I traveled the world for almost 12 years. Africa, India, Sri Lanka, China, all over the world, and worked everywhere, learning new ideas. And I just share one observation, and I'll just take 2 more minutes here. I got selected, and I didn't even know this, by the Guardian magazine in the UK as one of the 50 people to save the planet. Nobody on the panel that was making those decisions was an American. And there was only 4 Americans that were chosen: Al Gore, DiCaprio, me, and some other schmuck. And so there wasn't a schmuck. He's a good guy, Terry Tammet. I'm just being funky. But the point is that it shows that I was on the cutting edge. I worked on so many things. I made solar from wind. I put up a wind tower. I did crazy stuff at the United Nations and stuff. And I came back to government for two reasons. One, because I felt that in the clean tech space, in the renewable space and climate change, there was a lot of press conferences and noise, and nobody was really diving into the details. I'm a believer that God's in the details, not the devil. God is in the details. Do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. And so I worked in tremendous detail on so many of the issues every year, doing dozens of bills on climate change and energy crisis stuff, none of which got me on the front page of the paper, all of which are fundamental to make a transition to a clean environment. Secondly, was criminal justice reform and the idea of the rule of law. And the reason I'm running for this office is really the same reason that informed me. It was actually Alex Padilla and Tony Cardenas that got me to run after being gone for so long. I was gone for 12 years in government. And the reason was because the county of Los Angeles, now I know you're in a different situation because we're basically your mayor, supervisor, but the county of Los Angeles by population is larger than Michigan. It is not, except in your jurisdiction, which I'll talk about, a local government. It is an arm of the state. The 51 departments, every one, foster care, probation, go down the list. Those aren't local government jobs. And I was so frustrated that we're keep changing the law and putting so much money and stuff, and nothing was happening. And the last thing I'll share with you, because I know we want to talk specifically about Topanga, but this is the thing. I wasn't running, man. I wasn't running. I was done. I was going to form a green hydrogen business. I talked to some people in Perth, Australia. I talked to some people in Milano, Italy, and I was gone. But I just couldn't turn my back on the service of it all. It's my blood. It's my DNA. It's what I do. If anybody that's ever worked with me, you'll see that that's the case. I'm not a press conference person. I'm quietly behind the scenes, figuring it out and fixing it. And I'll talk to you about some specifics as we get into the questions. But I want to get you a sense of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Yeah, we can talk about public safety and housing and homelessness and the issues that face you guys on fire and all the issues of who's endorsing me and blah, 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 and all that stuff. But I'm not somebody who's just in office for office sake. I am deeply committed to the work. I work around the clock. I will never fail you. I will never walk away from you. I will never disrespect you. I will never not show up. It is not my nature. It is not what I'm about. It is not my DNA. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that people have. I'm sure there's a lot of specifics, but I want to give you a sense of who I am and why I'm doing this. I'm not a potted plant. I disagree with people, but I'll always be respectful. And I'm not somebody who doesn't know who he is. I've taken 20-some thousand votes. I've taken tough fights, and some are good and some are bad. And sometimes I make a mistake. You figure it out, you fix it, you course correct. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hertzberg. A lot of what you said was very compelling, and my God, I think you speak more quickly than I do. So, wow. But I want to say, of all the things you said, the thing that really stood out to me, and I think that we really want to hear in Topanga, we want to hear it and we want to see it, is that you will show up. You will be hands-on. We understand you have to have a district director and a deputy. We get that. We like that. We'll work with that person. But we want to see you, the candidate, the supervisor in our community, not once every 4 years, but regularly. So that's one thing.
Well, can I tell you something about that real quick?
Yes.
I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have a 2-year-old daughter, Athena Grace. Okay, her auntie lives at 1640 Old Topanga Canyon Road. We do swim class, as she likes to say, at Auntie Vivara's house, the alt houses, if you know them. They've got Hertzberg signs in front of their house. And we come out a lot, number one. Number two, I live in Van Nuys. And the reason I live in Van Nuys, I used to live in Sherman Oaks, but I thought it was the right thing to do to live in the center of the community I represent of 1 million people. Show respect, show respect, show respect. We're going to bring her to the school district, to Las Virgenes School District. It's not definitely in Topanga, but we're moving, whether I win or whether I lose, we're moving. I'm going to be closer to the community in terms of, I won't be in Topanga, but I'll be close, but we'll be spending a lot of time at Auntie Vara's house.
All right, well, we've got this recorded, so we'll see.
No problem. That's not a problem.
All right, so now into the real questions. I wanted to start with a question again on one of the most important topics in our community, emergency preparedness. So we are going to hear from James Grasso again, TCEP member and TEMP, Topanga Emergency Management Task Force leader. James, you want to go ahead and ask your first question?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. So in your view, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing Topanga residents? And can you briefly speak to the ones you see as most pressing?
Well, certainly, I think the uniqueness of the community, because we basically are the mayor in terms of showing up and being available and being respectful, number one. As it relates to emergency preparedness, fire. And fire means both ingress and egress in terms of parking cars and all that. Look, it also, I'm endorsed, Henry Stern, who's my colleague in Sacramento, was endorsed by the firefighters for the primary. They've endorsed me for the general, the local county fire, not CAL FIRE, which has a very different dynamic of what calls brush clearance and the like, which is important. Three, as it relates to fire with respect to the county, I know that Weights and Measures has been quite successful. 43,000 parcels that they cleared, and the Woolsey fire would have been much worse had they not been intelligent in that regard. Four, I put out a statement with respect to camping as it relates to fire that I wouldn't support that. I know the current administration supports that. I wouldn't support that. It's too much risk for the community in terms of fire. That's important. In terms of development, just so you know, way back when in the old school in 1984, I joined the board of Mulholland Tomorrow, which preserved the scenic corridor. It doesn't relate directly to you, but has indirect relationships in terms of who I am. And I spent 20 years. The only two boards I stayed on the when I was Speaker of the House was Mulholland Tomorrow and California Historical Society. And so I worked very hard, whether it was Canyon, not necessarily you, and I know people want to paint me as the old white guy who doesn't care about environment. And I'll talk about that. I have a 96% record with the California Conservation Voters, but I got in a fight with them because I'm not a potted plant. And I think there's been corruption in the legislature of the recent years. And basically it's park your head and your brain at the door, and you got no ability to ask questions. You got to genuflect when they say it. And I'm sorry, I spent 30 some years of my life in the climate world and the clean tech world, and I got an opinion and I'm going to use it. And I don't care. And I'm in that regard. But I think that as you talk about in terms of emergency preparedness, which is critically important, I'm not a CAL FIRE guy who wants to clear the road. I want to protect the integrity of the region in terms of that. But there's many more issues, but if I can stop there, because I don't want to go on too long and let more people ask questions.
Thank you, Senator.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next question. We're going to need to unmute Michelle Johnson. Our next question will be from a longtime member of the Canyon Sages, which represents the seniors in our community. Michelle, would you like to ask your question to Senator Hertzberg? All right, we are getting her unmuted. While we're getting her unmuted, we'll move on to the third question and circle back to Michelle once she gets set up so that we don't waste any time. So Michelle, sit tight, unmute yourself, and we're going to move on to the RCD, Clark Stevens, and Rosie Daggett, who have a question for the senator. Yeah. Clark, Rosie, how are you doing?
I can go ahead and first of all start by thanking the town council for putting us all together. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Senator, for being here, taking the time in our community. My question is, do you see the county's primary role for achieving climate resilient outcomes for our communities and habitats to be primarily about A, stopping bad land use proposals, mandating and enforcing regulations, or B, actively supporting and incentivizing climate resilient improvements to our existing homes and domestic landscapes, and why?
Both. I think you got to stop the bad shit, and I think you got to promote the good stuff. I think that you got to be intelligent about it. And what I would suggest, well, partly the landscape issues, it relates to you, but I would suggest it's a broader issue. And I would suggest further that my experience in terms of, my first solar company was in 1984. My second one was in 2003. I had an electric car company, wind company, solar company in Europe, worked in Africa, won the World Bank Award and that type of stuff. And what I would suggest is that if we're going to actually convert, I mean, partly it's the public policy in terms of landscape and what we're going to do and whether we're going to just plow everybody under or whatever, which is bad stuff. Also putting a bunch of crappy developments. I know I have some friends that are developers. I'm sorry. I said before, and I'll say it again. I'm not a potted plant. I'm not someone who just knee jerks. I've been through 1,000 wars. I've been through 1,000 cuts. I just don't do that. I'm not somebody who's running for their office. I'm not someone who's going to play those games. I'm going to respect the community, and I'm going to make sure things are done appropriately. But with respect to the larger issue, I would suggest your question is more focused on the landscaping and what's happening in the region, I would further also talk about what's important for purposes of developing. I'm really big on long-term picture thinking. And so I'm deeply concerned about the rich-poor divide. I'm deeply concerned about people getting really rich and other people getting really poor. I'm deeply concerned about how we convert to clean environment and how that happens where we can put people to work and we can create local jobs. And I would suggest that my experience in the financial sector, my experience in working at all kinds of creative aspects of the renewable space allows us to move quickly. We set these extraordinary standards at the state level. And quite frankly, the delta between getting from those political statements into actual reality are quite challenging. And so I would suggest that my experience in doing this stuff, in addition to government, look, the governor's endorsed me, man. He's my friend. He's going to help me. The state is critical in all this stuff. This former speaker, former majority leader, state is so critical. All the money that we need, these policies that are drafted, the interface between CAL FIRE, all of these things are critical to you. And my experience at those levels to make stuff happen is quite important. And I will spend every bit of political capital to make sure it happens. I'm old school. I take care of the people that elect me. People beat me up and say I'm an 818 guy. Well, you know what? You're damn right I'm an 818 guy because I represented those folks. And if tomorrow I represented Fresno, their streets would be paved with gold. That's what I do. And I'll do the same thing for you and all corners of the community. That's so important. And I'll be engaged. I'll listen. I'll show up. I'll show up. I'll show up. You could hold me to accountable for that all day long.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, we are trying to find our next two. Orion Olyate, want to make sure he's unmuted. And
I am unmuted.
fabulous. And then Cecily Stewart, if we could look for her in the attendees or the panelists and get her set up, that would be great. Okay, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and ask Senator Hertzberg your question?
Okay, Senator Hertzberg, thank you for joining us. I am the co-president of the Topanga Canyon Fire Safe Council. We've been very proactive in Topanga, becoming more resilient to wildfire. We're taking steps to harden our homes and create defensible space. We've also received a FireWise community designation this year, which is something we're very proud of because of all the efforts we've done. We have found that home hardening is one of the most effective things we can do. There are some bills coming through the legislature like SB 85 and AB 79 that would actually provide funds to homeowners to do that. And my question would basically be, how can Topangans better coordinate with LA County Sheriff, Fire Department, and other agencies? And what more do you think government and citizens can and should do to adapt to climate change? How can you achieve that goal? Could you help us get some funds in here to do some home hardening?
Well, number one is I will partner with Henry, who's my friend. I mean, we ran against each other, but there's no hard feelings and the like to get the legislation passed. I know how to do this stuff. I really do. It's not just hypothetical stuff. I know how to get votes. I know how to count votes. That's what I did. That's how I became speaker unanimously and the like to make sure that happens. And I'll work with Henry and everybody else as part of the LA delegation to make sure that happens because we need money and we got to make sure that the policy is consistent in terms of home hardening. We have a lot of coalitional partners in Northern California who's had horrible fires. Bill Dodd, Mike McGuire, Majority Leader, these other chairs of committee who are my friends to make stuff happen. So at the end of the day, again, what I said before, you have a split personality here. On the one hand, you have a supervisor that's a mayor, basically, and has the local jurisdiction. On the other hand, you have this dominant power of the state. It affects you so dramatically. All the home hardening bills, all the money dollars that we're talking about, all that stuff. And I think I can marry those respective things. And I would further suggest that the experience in the climate change world that I've been involved with for 30 some years, and I know my opponent's going to beat me up because I'm not endorsed by these groups, but that's just it. If anybody had the time to explain it, I'm just telling the God's honest truth. It's internal political stuff. I have a 96% voting record on that stuff, and I've got all the various pieces and parts, and I'm not staying in this job forever. I'm coming in to get stuff done and make it happen. So I think I can help you at the state level. I can help you with money dramatically in terms of the governor who's supporting me. And I've talked to him already about some of these issues and making it happen to help us in the community. There's more elements to what you said. But again, I'm just trying to get this essence of my mind and how I think. I can't answer everything that you asked unless you give me 3 hours to talk about it.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have Michelle Johnson back online. So let's see.
Excuse me, it says I'm unmuted. Do you now hear me?
We can
We
hear
sure
you.
do.
Okay,
We sure do.
great.
Go for it, Michelle. Ask
Okay,
your
Michelle.
question.
All right.
Better be good after all this time.
And this is about the seniors again in Topanga. Canyon Sages is the senior organization. We have thousands of seniors in Topanga, many living remotely in difficult circumstances. The Canyon Sages offers a wide range of services and activities for the seniors who live here while making special efforts for those with greatest needs. These needs far exceed the capacity of our community to provide for, and so it is imperative that the county fulfill its role. We need the county to provide regular funding for paid personnel to manage the programs, augmenting our roster of volunteers. Would you support such funding for Topanga? And as a second part, and as our county supervisor, what other ways could you offer to address the needs of seniors in Topanga?
Well, yes, the answer to the question is yes. How much money are we talking about? I got to write this down. You know, I'm an old school, but I put in I have what's called a promise book. When I say yes, I write it down in the promise book, so I deliver. What are we talking about on money? Do you know?
Well, when we were applying for grants, which we've been trying to get for this position, we were even figuring a part-time salary. So, you know, we would say, I think 20,000 a year would have gotten us a part-time worker, but we really need a full-time worker. So it depends on.
I will tell you right now, Michelle, this is what I will do. I would tell you this because I know that there's a bunch of money at the state. There's a bunch of state programs that I can help you. I know how to navigate that stuff. But I will write, I'm writing in my promise book right now. I have a notepad here, but I don't have my book in front of me where I am. But I will write down that we will fund that for you out of my grant program as supervisor, because you get like a $1.5 million and I'll put that in as my program. Okay.
I love that. I hope
done. You know, I'm just like, get it out, system advisor. Can I give you my email? Can you send me a note on that?
Yes.
My email is, you got a pencil?
Yes, I do. Wait a minute. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my personal email is robert.hertzberg19. My birthday is November 19th. Robert.hertzberg19, not COVID. Robert.hertzberg19@gmail. Send me a note on that. I'll make sure I do it. I commit to it out of the money that I have as discretionary funds. Next case, and if I can't get discretionary money, I'll raise the money.
And how about other ways to help the seniors in Topanga? Any ideas?
Well, I think that, look, you know, it's a perfect example of what the difference is between the state role and the county role and the local government role. There's not these programs of any consequence at the local level. There's 30 some programs that exist at the state level in terms of helping seniors. There's all kinds of stuff, not just transportation, in-home healthcare services. I'm supported by the unions in terms of that regard. 2015, I'm going to try to get them some more money. You know, by the way, the budget at the state, at the county went from $38.5 million to $44.6 million. Why did that happen? I've done the homework. It's sales tax, it's property tax in terms of valuations, a bunch of other things. There's a ton of money. Like, you know, one of the big things for me is I want to fund those 4 deputies in Lost Hills that hasn't been funded because there's a beef between the supervisor and the sheriff. I'm sorry, the beef may be legitimate. I'm not for the sheriff. That's not my deal, but I'm gonna figure out a way to make sure it's solved, you know, and bring the money in. So I can help you in terms of access to some of those state programs, because I know it so well. I've done it so much. I've worked on so many senior programs in the Senate district that I represent that's 1 million people. And if you send me the note, I'll back and forth with you to show you what that looks like. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, since you're giving out all this money, the next question is perfect for you. We've got other nonprofits lined up who need money. Okay. Let's see here. Cecily, are you available?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Hi, Cecily.
Yes, and hello. Hi, Senator Hertzberg. So I'm another local outcry for support and funding for our local nonprofits. As you've spoken to, and as you know, we're unincorporated LA, and the Board of Supervisors is our de facto mayor. So we have really high property taxes, but we really don't benefit from those tax dollars. So we need civic resources directed our way directly from your office. So how would you fund the nonprofits? I represent a sustainability nonprofit. It's been really tough to find dollars to fund a community compost program, which we all know is directly related to the Board of Supervisors' goals in reducing landfill. So, but even farmers markets, libraries, our schools, how would you fund our diverse civic needs and specifically sustainability infrastructure?
Senator Hertzberg? Oh, you're muted. Senator Hertzberg, you
Muted.
got muted.
I got muted. Okay, am I okay now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, did you hear the BS comments? Sorry, but hey, I'm straight up. I just don't have patience for the small ball stuff. Look, to me, what the thing is, what kind of revenue stream do you guys produce in terms of property tax, what that looks like? How are you guys getting underserved in terms of what needs to be happening? What other, both in terms of money from, like, what are your sources of revenue? It's whether it's the county, whether it's the state, whether it's the federal government, whether it's the not-for-profit sector. One of the things that I've done a lot in my time is I've worked with a lot of not-for-profits. I'll just share an idea that I have that kind of informs, again, how I think. I created, as I told you, the Capital Institute. Now, even though I'm leaving office, and even though I'm running for a cockamamie other office, okay, I'm building the Senate Academy. The first deal is on November 14th to train members. What I want to do is go raise $5 million from a bunch of friends and basically put together a training institute for people who care about government. What happens to the sales tax? Where does it come from? What happens to the property tax? Where does it go? I don't care if you're running for water board, school board. There's 88 cities in LA County. There's 86 school districts to train people. And so I have a zillion relationships from a zillion people. I've spent millions of dollars that I've been able to get my friends to give us for all kinds of endeavors. I spent $2 million working on tax reform from a friend of mine. I worked on, I just spent $500,000 on home ownership that I raised from outside of people. I marry the outside world with the inside world. So the answer to the question is, one, I'm not going to shortchange other parts of the community. I'm not going to tell Santa Monica, sorry, I'm giving everything to Topanga, or Malibu, I'm giving it to Topanga. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play that game. But the reality is there's so much money, it shouldn't be a problem, number one. Number two is, because of my relationships, I'm able to raise money for good causes. I've done so much stuff on climate change, and so many other issues. So the reality is, I will sit down. And the third thing is, that's really, really important. Not only am I going to show up, but I'm not going to put I don't mean this by ageism, because people beat me up because I'm too old, but somebody who doesn't have experience. I want to find somebody where I consult with the community who's really respected, somebody who's loved by the community, somebody who treats people well. And I'm going to put people in office. I'm going to dramatically increase the number of offices that the Board of Supervisors have. I started out telling you that it's bigger than the state of Michigan, and they got like 4 offices. Are you kidding me? I'm going to more than double the number of people. I'm going to increase the number of staff. And the unfortunate kind of dirty little secret is this county pays so much money. At the state, we don't pay much money. So I have to hire people that will make $45,000 a year. I can pay people $100,000 a year at the county. And so I can get really good people who can come in. And, my second promise I'm going to write down to you, in addition to the money for the seniors, is I'm going to consult on staff. I really want excellent people. I want people where you guys go, wow, this guy's put together the greatest team. These are great. This is somebody who has great respect, to the community. And I'm gonna do it every corner of the community. I'm gonna open an office in Venice. I'm gonna open an office in West Hollywood. We have, I got relationships all over the place. My brother worked for Gloria Molina for 20 years. I sat in a bunch of commissions. I did a bunch of stuff at the county. I know so many people all over the place, and I've been quietly doing the homework. Not because I'm an arrogant person that says I want to win, but I got to hit the ground running. There's huge expectations. Confidence in government is everything. That means you got to make stuff happen, and I got to roll. And so I need help. And if you want to, who's got my email, if you got ideas of people that you think are really like rage, I'm an old guy, so I use the word bitching, really incredibly good and smart and thoughtful and creative and gracious to people. You can tell somebody no, but there's a way to do it in a gracious way. The county is a weird place. It's a weird institution. And nobody on my staff is going to be anybody other than you're going to go, they treated me great. Because if they didn't, they ain't lasting very long. So I'm sorry for the long answer, but I think much larger than the myopic piece. I don't think like that. You know, that's not how my mind works. That's not why I'm doing this job. I'm not here to play small ball. I'm here to make stuff happen. I'm here to roll hard. You know, I'm here to work hard.
Well, we'll take your great deputy out here. We really need that person.
Well, please help me find that person. I have some ideas of a few people here and there, but if you've got some people that you think are rock stars, light me up because I'll hire them.
We do.
Great.
We definitely do. Definitely circle
I
back.
gave you my email.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah, light me up. Light me up.
Fabulous.
And
Okay.
test me.
Oh, yeah. No, we will. We will. We like to put people to the test. We like work ethic, and we like being able to contact and get in touch with people, you know, directly. That's really, that means a lot.
You got my cell phone number. You got my email. I'm totally accessible, man.
All right. Well, we've got a few more questions, but I will say this is like the lightning round because you are really tackling these questions with great efficiency. I will definitely say that. I'm going to have to go back and watch this recording to get everything that you said. I wanted to go ahead and circle back to an environmental question. And this is a more specific question, and it relates to the Santa Monica Mountains and some oil and gas issues here. Susan, I don't want to steal your thunder. Can we let Susan Nisman, who is a former district director under Zev Yaroslavsky, she has a question to ask.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Bob. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I spent 20 years. Bob and I knew each other during that time with Zev. And I don't know if I'm available. Anyway.
Maybe I could pay you more. Maybe I could pay a lot more than Zev did.
We'll talk about that. No, anyway. One of the things that is very important, I think, to understand, not only are you the mayor, but you're the council person, you're the administrator, you're the executor, and you're quasi-judicial, code enforcement and everything else. It's quite an oversight in terms of the job. Topanga is not parochial. We have these parochial issues, but they really are very global in the context of things having to do with the environment and fires and social justice and everything else. We're a very progressive community. So that old saying, think global, act local, can also be reversed. And that's think local, act global. The question I have is about public health and environmental justice. And it's a very current issue right now. LA Times had an article just recently about what's happening with this. We all know that drilling for oil and gas near homes and schools is a dangerous and unhealthy enterprise, correct? There's been tons and tons of studies and research that has shown that. After 2 failed legislative attempts, which I think you're acquainted with, to pass statewide setbacks for homes and schools, and considering the new findings that dozens of oil wells were found leaking near homes in LA County, SB 1137 finally prevailed in September of this year and was signed into law by the governor. Now, unfortunately, the same special interests who blocked that setback bill, that law, for 2 years are circulating a petition to overturn it and gather signatures for a ballot initiative in 2024.
I didn't know that.
Which would now stall implementation of that setback law. What are your thoughts on this? If elected, how will you support and strengthen? I'm sorry. So somebody's unmuted.
Yes, please, somebody mute. Everybody who's not speaking, mute. So Senator Hertzberg and Susan should be the
Wait a
only
minute.
two.
So what are your thoughts on that? If elected, how will you support and strengthen, I hope you're aware, of the county's own recent regulations on setbacks and future drilling? And also answering finally, do you take political contributions from oil and gas special interests? Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Can I be brilliantly candid on this question?
I would hope so.
Because I'm so sick of the situation. What happened is, when I came back to government, it is so painful to me. When I was speaker, the world was different. I come back 12 years later, and it's all about these outside interscoops that you have to park your brain at the door. You got to be a potted plant. And so there was a bill on a setback deal that Marisucci had, and I'm the guy who killed it. I did. I killed it. Okay. No questions asked. I shut it down. Let me tell you why I shut it down. I shut it down first because the first part of the bill said that the governor's office was going to create an Office of Environmental Justice, the Department of Resources. We had just done it 6 weeks earlier in the budget trailer bill. It was done. Second, the governor had put together a whole team of people to figure out what the problem was, to solve it, and figure out what the solution should be, not 2,500 feet, but just to give the authority to the scientists to figure out what to happen and to come back in October of 2021. The bill said there has to be a study by October 2022. I'm sick and tired of the grandstanding. I am sick and tired of people that, like, just because some group says you got to do something, I'm sorry, I'm not a potted plant. And I stood up and I outlined all 9 sections of the bill where it was happening. And guess what happened? What happened was the governor came out 3,200 feet setback. Exactly the same thing. And secondly, guess what happened? This bill 1137, it only had 18 votes. I missed a ton of votes on stuff because go ask Henry Stern, go ask Ben Allen, go ask Senator Becker. Who got that bill off the floor to make sure that it happened? Who went and wrestled the votes as the former majority leader knows how to do that to make it happen? So, it's like what happens in our world is that, if you didn't sit and go along with people because people won't have a discussion. It's this horrible situation. I've spent 30 some years in this space. I know what I'm talking about. Everybody got pissed because I had the audacity to challenge it. I'm sorry, I'll always do that. But I was right. The solution was better. I asked Henry and Ben and Becker and all these guys came to me. Hertzberg, you got to get this off the floor. You're the only one who could do it. I did it. I didn't know about the referendum on the bill. I will oppose it and I will support setbacks. Number two, with respect to this oil and gas stuff that they're hitting me on, I took a crap load of money from oil in 2000 when I was speaker to elect Democrats. When I was running for office, the Republicans were in power. I'm sorry. Everybody else did it. I went through the list. There wasn't a single Democrat, including the supervisor, including the senator, including everybody else who didn't take oil money. Go look at the records. What did I do with the money? I took every nickel and I elected Democrats. What did I do from a policy perspective? I supported Fran Pavley's tailpipe emission to get it through. I supported the Malibu stuff. I supported the renewable portfolio standards. So this notion that if you took the money, I did it to elect Democrats and everybody else did it. Go look at the records. I don't want to name names, but the facts speak for themselves. So all I'm suggesting to you is that, and it's like I have a 96% record with CLCV, but I became the poster child. And it's okay. It's life. And yes, and I've taken a zillion bullets and I've toughed the tough fights and I spent my life fighting on this. I didn't just sit back. I go to all these members and I say, how much did you do to renew carbon in the environment? I spent my life, 12 years of it, traveling all over the planet, doing crazy cool stuff, having huge impacts on people's lives and families' lives in Sri Lanka and Africa, and really fabulously good stuff. So yeah, I get politics and I'm sorry for the long answer, but I'm sick, it's like, but I'm not a potted plant. And I'm not just going to bend over. And the facts, if somebody took the time, as you're now hearing now, and check me out on every single thing, talk to Henry, talk to Ben, who's endorsed me, talk to anybody else, talk to the governor as to why he endorsed me. And I got all 5 of his bills on environmental through and killing myself to make it happen. And I got in trouble because I missed a bunch of other votes because I was working on these issues. So my record is clear. The pain I paid is high. And I don't sweat the small stuff, and I will fight the big fights. And I did it. And I know people are pissed at me because of it, but they're wrong. I did what was right. I did it the right way. I just didn't do it their way.
So bottom line, what I heard is that no matter what, you would support the county current regulations with the rest of the Board of Supervisors, maintaining those and keeping those in place regardless of what happens.
Right. And I didn't know about the referendum. I didn't know.
It just came out.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
They didn't waste a lot of time.
Yeah, but I didn't know that. I mean, it's the same thing they're doing on the fast food bill. And
yes, they are. Yes.
They did it to me on bail. They beat me up on bail. Like, okay, welcome to the world. But
somebody needs to reform the referendum process. But we can talk.
I
about
tried
that
to
later.
do it. I couldn't get it done last time. I was trying to do it. I did the initiative process. I'm sorry for the long answer to everybody, but I wanted.
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to get you to understand this. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Terrific. No, good hard charging question. Good candid answer. Okay, we are starting, we have about 3 minutes left. So we probably have time for about one more question. And then I want to go ahead, possibly 2, and you can go into your closing statement, and then we go into a transition time. Okay, Roger, I'm going to ask you to unmute, and you're going to, can you see it? Great. Okay, Roger, if you could go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, Senator Hertzberg, if you don't mind, I'm going to call you Bob. Is that okay?
Of course, you couldn't call me
Okay,
Bobby.
good. Bob, as we all know, many of us are judged by the friends we keep. And one of the major concerns, not only in Topanga, but in the Santa Monica Mountains, has all to do with development. We've got people that are your best friends, and you've said they are your best friends. People like Fred Gaines, people like Paul Grisanti, people like Brian Boudreau. All of these people that I've just mentioned are people that are always pro-development. They're either pro-development or they want to destroy the Santa Monica Mountains on some level. I would like to know how you're going to deal with this when they come before you and ask for development privileges on various things. And I would like to get a real answer, not a canned answer, if you don't mind.
As one of the goddamn answers have I given you a canned answer. I've given you straight up on the straight up. I haven't given you can. I'm not a canned answer
You do
guy.
keep saying you're not a potted plant. You've said that about 100 times already. But go ahead.
That's not a canned answer. That's a true statement. Okay, look, it's the same reason why when the environmental community came to me and said, do this, and I thought they were wrong. I can give you 20 examples of what I've done in my life. I'm not a kid. I'm not someone running for office. I'm not somebody who's playing the angles. I will make proper judgments. I will deal with the law. I don't know that Paul Grisanti was a development guy. He's the mayor of, he endorsed me. He's the mayor of Malibu. I didn't know he had anything to do with development. I know Fred Gaines certainly does as a lawyer, and he's been a dear friend of mine for a long time, but I've had a lot of beefs with him and I've disagreed with him. And you know, the big genius in this business is to disagree with your friends. And I've done it 1,000 times, you know, and that's what and if I agree with them, I agree with them. I don't, but I'm not. And the reason I said what I said about the Mulholland Tomorrow is that I spent 20 years doing that stuff, preserving the scenic corridor, fighting a bunch of people and a bunch of developers on stuff. I shared that with you because I told you that that and the California Historical Society, the only two boards I stayed on when I was speaker, because I wanted to express to you that those were values that I had. And I had a zillion fights, whether it was in Fryman Canyon or go down the list of a bunch of people, and a bunch of my friends were on the other side, and I stuck to my guns. So that was 20 years of my life. And so all I'm suggesting you is the record speaks for itself. Do I have friends? Sure. Do I have people that support you all over the place? Sure. And if I told them no, sure. If I told, and that's all I can tell you, man. But that's why I started out telling you about Mulholland Tomorrow.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. All right, so God, we have so many questions. All of a sudden they're coming on quick, but we are now running out of time. You've covered a lot. You really have. You've circled the globe in terms of the questions that you've answered, and you've done a really good job. I want to give you now 1 to 2 minutes. You have, until 7:55 or 6:55 or so to wrap it up and leave us with some closing thoughts about what you'll do for Topanga.
All I want to say is this. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your participation in the community and volunteering and helping out in the community. It means a lot. It's the only way democracy survives. And the message I want to give you is the same message I gave you in my opening comment and hopefully threaded through some of my questions. Zev is a perfect example. This is a weird job, okay? You can be a person once you get elected and because you represent so many people, never show up. And I've seen that happen. Or you can be someone like Catherine, whether you agree with her politics or not, or Zev, that show up. It's in your DNA. And so you can hide in this job, or you can be real. And, I got in big trouble with the current incumbent because when I was working on a transportation route for CSUN, I called on Zev because he's so smart on the issue. He knows a lot more than I do. And I got in trouble. He's not the supervisor. I'm the supervisor. I can't tell you how many people still think that Zev's a supervisor. And I take a lot of guidance from him and how he thinks and how he approaches problem solving and showing up. That's what I do. And if I haven't convinced you of that, you can agree with me or disagree with me, but I will show up. I will come up with creative ideas. I'm a hard charging person. I'm full of energy and ideas. I'm not someone who's going to play angles on politics. And I do have, not enough of understanding, because you can always learn. It's my whole message, learning, learning, learning. And I'll always get better and I'll always learn, but I'll hire excellent people. I'll show up, I'll listen deeply, and I'll course correct as I make mistakes. If I make a mistake, I'm not somebody who's going to say, oh my God, look, you live and you learn. Okay, I blew it. I'll move in the other direction. I'll figure it out. But I'll be there, and I'm not going to be a punk, and I'm not going to be arrogant, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, whether I agree with you or not. And this is, at the end of the day, what I said in the beginning. It's my DNA, man. It's service. I can go out and make a ton of money. I have complete the ability to make commercial stuff, but this feeds my soul, man. This is what I like. This is what I enjoy. This is what gives me meaning. There's no such thing as legacy in life. It doesn't exist. You show a picture of Jack Kennedy to one of these talk shows, they don't even know who he is. You ask people what the 3 branches of government are, a third of the people wouldn't know. What do you do on a daily basis? How do you improve people's lives? How do you solve big problems? And the last thing I'll share with you is I look around the corner. What happens in politics is everybody wants to talk about what's on top of mind or what's in the polls. I'm thinking about water in a very big way. Department of Water Resources, how it impacts you guys. I'm thinking about economic development and these larger issues that inform me on climate change that we have to build locally. We've got to create jobs locally. If there's a big fight between the oilies and the enviros because the labor people want jobs in the oily world. Well, if you can get them jobs in the green space world that are high wage jobs, you avoid that tension. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be really smart and elegant about solutions, because at the end of the day, I can talk all damn day long. And the fact of the matter is, do I deliver for you or not? Do I solve the problem or not? Do I make stuff happen or not? Do I serve the community and make it happen or not? And that's how I judge myself. That's what I'm about. That's why I'm doing this. This is not a political career for me. This is a statement of service. And so for that, I will be there. I thank everybody for your service and your involvement in the community. And thank you for your time. And thank you for listening to my very candid, non-canned answers.
Thank you very much, Senator Hertzberg, for coming out tonight. It was very gracious of you. We are deeply appreciative, and we really are honored that you came out. And please do remember that should you be elected, we're here and we are ready to call in some of those promises. So
I wrote them down. I'll put them in my promise book. I've got a pad. I've got a clipboard here, but I don't have a promise book, but I wrote it down to write it down in my promise book. So don't worry. It's in my promise book. I will make it happen.
Thank you. And thank you for also just letting us learn a little bit more about you and what you want to do here and what motivates you. That adds a lot of insight. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and transition out of session 1 and into session 2. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move Senator Hertzberg into the green room. And then we're going to move Councilwoman Horvath into the main room. And then Roger is going to get ready, sir, to introduce Councilwoman Horvath with a brief biographic overview of some of her experience over the last few years. And then we will hear from Councilwoman Horvath herself with an opening statement and then a whole bunch of questions. I gotta say, I was actually really surprised by how quickly we went through questions with Senator Hertzberg. So there's a good chance that questions you submitted in the chat or the Q&A will be asked. And it's possible we'll even have time for some more questions. So don't feel like they're going unused. We are looking to use them and probably will use several of them. Thank you. Okay. Are we good? How are we doing with Councilwoman Horvath? Is she in?
She's here. I'm asking her to unmute.
Hi.
Fantastic. Hello, Councilwoman Horvath.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Do people need a break?
Oh my goodness. Sort of. So this is sort of it, but yes, good question. I will say Senator Hertzberg speaks very quickly. So I am a little bit recovering. You got a lot covered, but holy smokes, that was a lot. And I was surprised by how many questions we got to, but that's great because the more people that can ask questions, the more concerns you can hear and the more concerns you can address. So that's good in my book. But anyway, to give everybody a breather, we're going to have Roger read a brief sort of biographical sketch of your recent experience, and then we'll turn it over to you so you can take 2 or 3 minutes to kind of give an overview of who you are and how you see yourself being the best candidate for Topanga.
And I won't be offended if you turn off your camera and need to go walk to the bathroom and listen from afar or whatever you need to do to take a break. As never-ending Zooms are trouble sometimes. So
Very good point. Actually, you can do that during Roger's point if you want, but when Lindsay's on, pay attention. Okay, Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you and look forward to hearing all about Lindsay's experience.
First, let me say it's an honor and a privilege to introduce Lindsay Horvath to everyone. Councilmember Lindsay Horvath has been active as an elected official since 2009. She served on the West Hollywood City Council from 2009 to 2011, and then she came back and again was elected to the City Council on March 3rd, 2015. She previously served as a council member for 2 years from 2009 to 2011, as I mentioned. Councilmember Horvath has a long history of civil and social justice advocacy and has spearheaded policies to make West Hollywood an age-friendly community. She also is someone who has lobbied in Sacramento for legislation that responds to local community needs. So I give you Leslie Horvath.
Yay, okay. Councilwoman Horvath, did you want to go ahead and give your opening statement and then we'll queue up the questions?
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you very, very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you tonight, seeing some familiar faces. I know that there are even more folks watching whose faces I can't see, and I thank you for this opportunity to come and speak with you. Coming from local government, I fully appreciate that each community has its own unique perspectives, its own unique experience, and wonderful things that make it so special. And Topanga is sort of like the epitome of that description when I think about how you have built and maintained and protected and really enriched your community. And I'm eager to be your supervisor, not to come in and tell you what to do, but to be your partner and your ally in making sure that what makes Topanga special continues to thrive, and that you have the resources and support that you need to grow for people to be able to age in place and to continue to support the arts and cultural programs that exist in your community. I come from local government, as I mentioned, serving 15 years as a city official in my community. I've also served at regional, state, and federal levels for National League of Cities, for California Contract Cities Association, which is the association of cities that contract for service with LA County and beyond. So I've served at a variety of levels, but always focused on local issues and local control. And I think that's incredibly important in this moment as we think about issues that are top of mind for folks, ranging from homelessness and housing. How are we going to address this crisis and make sure that it doesn't contribute to other issues like safety issues, and how do we keep people safe in our communities? I know especially fire safety, issues of street racing that have been happening in your neighborhoods, and happy to get into, I'm sure we'll get into all of these details as we go forward. Protecting our climate and making sure that we fully fund the county's sustainability plan. I'm proud to be endorsed. I just shared a whole list of community environmental leaders, including the president of California Environmental Voters, Fran Diamond. And I mention her because they are a state level organization, which typically focuses on state races, but they took the extraordinary step to get involved in this race because they've seen what my opponent has done in Sacramento, and they're very concerned that he would bring some of his bad behavior up there into the county. And they very much see the work that I have done, which has been recognized and endorsed by the Sierra Club, the local League of Conservation Voters, Sunrise Movement, Center for Biological Diversity. Every environmental organization that has endorsed in this race has endorsed me because of my record and my willingness to partner to ensure that we're protecting our environment. I come from the city that is often referred to as the creative city, but I do know that the arts and culture in Topanga is incredibly special. And in fact, my creative director in my advertising agency, my current day job, lives in Topanga and has shared what makes Topanga so special to him and to his family, his two beautiful girls, and why it's been such a special place for him to raise a family. And that's really given me insights into how I can be the best county supervisor, in addition to insights from, our local staff person here currently serving the supervisor, Tessa Chernovsky, who supports me in this race, and making sure that we have, sort of a continued growth and development on the plans that have been implemented by folks in the community, and the vision that you all have developed for Topanga to make sure that it's realized. And I'm excited to be your partner in making sure that the county steps up and delivers for you and is able to allow Topanga to continue to be a special place.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, going back online. And by the way, just so you know, Councilwoman Horvath, I will occasionally put my video off or my mute off just so I don't lose the connection.
That's
the unstable connection.
And that's an issue. I understand that's an issue.
However, I've got 2 forms of wired internet set up for tonight, so I'm not going down. Damn it.
No worries.
All right, so we're going to start with our questions. Our first one, again, is going to be, we're going to do some repetition or some redundancy with the first candidate so people can compare and contrast. But then there will be some questions that really aren't appropriate for you, seem like irrelevant. They sort of ask him about things in his record that really don't make sense. So we're going to try to incorporate some other questions that are more tailored to you. Okay, so we're going to start off first with James Grasso of TCEP, the Topanga Coalition for Emergency Management, and he will get us started.
Hey, James, nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well, Councilwoman, again. So I'll ask you the same question that I asked the senator.
Okay.
In your view, what do you see as the most pressing issues facing Topanga residents? And can you briefly speak to the ones you see as most pressing? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I would say fire safety, making sure that the resources that the community needs are fully funded and protected, that the county fire department and the state fire department partners with our county fire department in terms of their response. And happy to get into very much the details on what some of those plans are. I'm proud to be endorsed by Sarah Rathbun, who is a leader and the president of the Women Firefighters Organization, and have a lot of folks within the department I've worked with, because our city contracts with the fire department, and so I've worked with the county fire department very closely. Our public safety director partnered with in the emergency operations center during Woolsey that was based in Santa Monica. And so our community really got a firsthand look, yes, from afar, but a firsthand look into what the operations center looked like, what some of the needs were, where the gaps in service were, and how to make sure that we are responding to and preventing what is now no longer a fire season, but the continuous threat of fires in your area. I would say keeping the community special, so preventing overdevelopment, but making sure that the local business community has the support and resources it needs for the community to thrive, and that the county continues to be a partner and not get in the way, but does focus on issues like infrastructure, whether it's making sure that the undergrounding of utility equipment or addressing the impacts of utility equipment that can contribute to fires, but also impact your ability, like Carrie's experiencing, to be online and to continue doing some of the work that people are doing from home and communicate, and whether, again, it's during a time of safety, but also in your day-to-day work and in your jobs, making sure that that we're doing all that we can to protect, the quality of life that you all have enjoyed. I've heard that impacts from overhead airplanes and helicopters, not the ones that are keeping you safe, but the ones that, but others that are commercial in nature, have started to impact the quality of life, the peace and serenity that people have typically enjoyed in Topanga. So there are a lot of unique and special issues. And I know that there are a lot of other concerns that people have raised with regard to the environment, I would say making sure that we're preserving our natural resources and that we actually are helping to restore our natural environment where it has been damaged. And then I think some of the unique qualities of a community that that help community building. In my city, I help to lead our Aging in Place, Aging and Community Plan in partnership with the World Health Organization and AARP. And my commissioner for Human Services actually also serves on the County Commission for Older Adults in partnership with their newly developed Department of Aging. And so I'm very skilled and familiar with some of those issues and how we make sure that we develop age-friendly communities. I know your SAGES program is one that we need to support in the county, and making sure that the resources that you need are provided, that the plans to help people create community for a lifetime are fully realized, so the community can be enjoyed by everyone.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Sorry, James. Okay, well, I got to tell you, you sort of anticipated the next question, because some of what you said about the SAGES and supporting our seniors and our elderly, this will come in handy. So I'm going to let Michelle Johnson pose the question, but I suspect you'll be reiterating some of those points and probably adding some new ones. Okay. Michelle, you ready?
Hi there. Yes, I represent the Canyon SAGES. And just a little background, that we actually have thousands of seniors in Topanga, many living remotely, as you might know, in difficult circumstances, and makes it difficult to leave in case of a fire, also makes it difficult to give services. So to draw them out, the Canyon SAGES offers a range of services and activities while making special efforts for those with the greatest needs. These needs far exceed the capacity of our community to provide for, and so it is imperative that the county fulfill its role. We need the county to provide regular funding. This is the first part of what I'm asking, for paid personnel to manage the programs, augmenting our roster of volunteers. Would you support such funding for Topanga? And then also, I would like to know, as our county supervisor, what other ways could you offer to address the needs of seniors in Topanga?
Absolutely. I want to make sure that you have the funding and resources necessary to the extent that we can provide personnel to help. That's something I would be interested in. But I just want to touch on where you started. In my community, we have a lot of older adults who, especially during this time of crisis, I served as mayor, and I was deeply concerned about them living in isolation, not having anyone to help while we were asking people to sort of hunker down and stay safe in place. We know that could actually create more risks, just as you outlined, if we're not paying attention to who's in our community. So we turned our recreation staff, rather than cutting them loose like many cities did to cut the cost, we turned them into an operation that actually actively called into homes of our older adults to check in on people, to make sure they had food delivery, they had the resources they needed, they were connected to healthcare services, and that if they had any unique health concerns, that we made sure they were connected to local healthcare facilities. That is the way we need to take care of our older adults. This is something that's very personal to me. I had the pleasure of growing up in the presence of my grandparents. They lived in the community I lived, so I saw them all the time. And I think that I grew as a person because I was able to grow up with people of all ages, and every community thrives when people of all ages thrive. And so that's something that I'm very interested in helping to support.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, Michelle, if you could go ahead and mute yourself after speaking. And then I heard some water plumbing noises in the background somewhere. So everybody, once again, check your mute button and make sure you're muted if you're not a speaker. Lindsay, don't mute yourself.
Okay, I won't.
Okay, we are going to try to work in an attendee. One of our attendees has posed a question about fiber and wireless and all of that jazz. Do we have her lined up, James?
Yes, she should be good to go. Charlene?
I'm good to go. Thank you. Let me.
Charlene.
Hi, my camera is off, so that's the way it is. So here we go.
It's fine.
So the Board of Supervisors is scheduled to pass proposed changes to Title 16 and 22 of the LA County Ordinance that will codify ministerial review, that's make it law for those who don't understand, for wireless telecommunications facilities in LA County. Now, this will remove notice, hearings, appeals, CEQA, NEPA, oversight, and a ton of other things. Would you be willing to revise this position so that the community is empowered to have more local control over the negative eco-community impacts, operational problems, and risks this wireless infrastructure poses, and move to solve these issues using preferred fiber optics to the premises as outlined by the federal government?
Yes, I would be very much interested in revising to make sure we protect local control. I actually led that effort, serving on a committee at the state organization, the California League of Cities. I was their chair of transportation, communications, and public works. So I actually led the effort to fight the bill that was trying to move forward in Sacramento at the time. And even before that, when I first became a council member, I successfully fought at the PUC changes that Southern California Edison was bringing forward to allow any equipment that had been undergrounded previously by a community to be brought above ground by right without notice, without communication to a community. And they cited safety as the reason, when in fact the deep dive showed that that wasn't the issue at all. They were just trying to prevent costs that they needed to spend in order to keep communities safe going forward. So I have experience actually dealing with public infrastructure and public works issues, making sure that we're dealing with these outside service providers in a way that actually works with us locally, not against us. And I would want to make sure that any policy the county moved forward would respect the rights of the local community.
Thank you.
Perfect. Terrific. Great answer. Great question. And yes, I'm all about local control and making sure the community is involved and that these decisions just don't happen without our input. That's just unacceptable in Topanga. And glad to hear you are on board with that thinking. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of people who want to ask questions. We're trying to work more people in, so bear with us as we kind of juggle this. But we're going to try to bring, thank you, Ali Acker in if she's available to speak now to ask a question. And then I have an Elisa Landhill and Just Breach.
Hi, Ali.
Hi, Councilwoman. I have a question for you, actually, two different questions, but one of them, there has been a lot of community discussion about trash. It's a very local issue in the unincorporated area, but I saw quite a few emails about that, and there has been a sharp rise in the cost of trash and the contracts. And how would you go about, and I talked to you about this online, so I wanted to follow up and share with everyone your thoughts on that issue.
Absolutely. So I know that it feels like I've heard from different folks that there are just a couple of providers who have typically come to your region. And I want to make sure that if we're not getting the kind of service from these trash haulers that you all need, that we are addressing that in policy. I've worked in, this is actually something I have experience in coming from local government, where we've worked with our local trash hauler to address their routes, to make sure that they are picking up bulky items regularly and not leaving things to become attractive nuisances in our communities. We've worked with them also to address some of the new legislation that the state has passed with regard to some of the composting materials that we need to divert from our trash now. And they're working with our community proactively to educate the community about what the policy says. They're providing bins to make sure that people have the ability to separate their recyclables from our regular trash, from the compostables, and understanding how that collection will happen. They are our partner in doing this work. And so it would be my hope that we would achieve a contract with a trash hauler that is both affordable and comes with those kinds of services to make sure that we have a service provider that is all encompassing to your needs. And we've worked with our trash hauler to extend contracts, and that's allowed them flexibility in trying to keep our costs down. So that's something I have experience in our ability to negotiate with these service providers also.
Great. All right, Allie, do you have any follow-up there? Okay, maybe she's muted herself. Oh, she's muted herself. Very dutifully muted herself, so there would be no background noise. Great. Okay, you seem satisfied, so we're good. Excellent. Okay, then we will go ahead and move on. We're juggling in somebody who just
The helicopters were overhead, so.
Oh, God bless. Thank you. Yes, I know. It sounds like Russia is bombing us, but.
So I do have a second question though.
Okay.
I do have a second question.
Sure.
I would like to ask the councilwoman about, we've received, and I've gotten a lot of questions from locals about campaign mailers and the issue of a woman's right to choose. And so I would like that issue and who's endorsed her. And so I would like the councilwoman to address that issue.
I really appreciate you asking, Allie. I'm glad that we get to focus on the issues, but this one is actually more than a distraction. It's really disgusting what you're seeing in your mailboxes because it is a complete and total fabrication. I am 100% pro-choice. I am endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I am endorsed by every single pro-choice organization that has endorsed in this race. The National Organization for Women, the Women's Political Committee, the National Women's Political Caucus, Emily's List, Fund Her. I was even just endorsed today by Black Women for Wellness. After all of this hoopla has come forward, they still stand with me, and organizations are continuing to stand with me because of the record I have demonstrated as a two-time mayor of America's first pro-choice city. But even before my service on the council, I was a board member of the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project, where I worked a hotline to make sure that we provided funding for low-income women to have access to abortions throughout the country. I have been on the front lines of this issue as a volunteer, as an advocate, and the fact that my opponent and his special interest dollars are trying to mislead you or just quite frankly discourage you from voting because of how disgusting they are is really upsetting. So I appreciate you raising the issue so I can make very clear on the record here that you do not need to worry about me not being the champion and ally that you need. In fact, I have been the one who's been leading the charge in my own community with our legislation and making sure we have the infrastructure right here in Los Angeles County to support everyone's right to choose, even if they come from out of state, because of what we're seeing throughout the country. This is a time where we need to come together on this issue.
Perfect. I'm really glad you got a chance to address that. And Allie, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, that people have been asking about that, wondering how the heck that happened. So it was very good that you were able to clarify that. Okay, so we've got a bunch of people. We're going to try to work Elisa in next because she's going to have to leave early. So Elisa, if you are available, we would love to hear your question. And then after Elisa, we'll be hearing from Jess Breed. Both women are town council board members and active in the school community and a number of other things. Elisa, you're up.
So, thank you. I'm going to be sharing a few questions from the chat from our community members. I'm going to start with two that are related questions asked by Rosie Daggett and Jessica Williamson. One question is, what are your highest priorities in terms of protecting and preserving the Santa Monica Mountains? And a companion question is specifically about how strong your prioritization might be about native land reclamation efforts and whether there would be financial support to such efforts.
Absolutely. I think this is absolutely something that we need to invest in. I know that the county sustainability plan has outlined action steps, but because of the unique nature and environment of Topanga, we need to go even further. We know that you're a community that cares about wildlife, that cares about trees and open space. And so we need to make sure that the plans that the county has in place actually protect that going forward, that we protect the Santa Monica Mountains area from overdevelopment, as I mentioned earlier, and that that the local coastal plan and the North Area Plan both help us to preserve and conserve, but also make sure that that we can continue to thrive as a community so it doesn't disappear. We need to make sure that we limit development also because of potential fire impacts, but we have to support the wildlife conservation. And I know that very unique opportunities that exist, sort of like the pathway that was created over the 101. We can take those kinds of innovations and bring them right into the heart of Topanga to make sure that we are addressing wildlife concerns in your own neighborhoods. One thing that we did in mine was do a local milkweed distribution to help with bees and making sure that we have bees in our community because they're very important. We need to help them repopulate. So we need to make sure that we also are supporting the use of native plants. So we are not only helping to rebuild what was once there, but also making sure that we're not causing greater water issues, because we know that water conservation will be an issue going forward as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Carrie, may I ask one or two other questions for the chat, and then we pass to Jess Freed?
Sounds good.
So one question from Noni Shore. She asks, are you willing to renegotiate the waste management contract, which I believe to be patently unfair? Councilwoman?
Absolutely. I think that was part of Ally's question as well. And so we want to make sure that you have a contract that is fair, that addresses your needs. And even if that means bringing in a new hauler to address the needs that you have. The good news is I know I've worked with a lot of them, and I've had experience making sure that we have a contract that works for our residents. And I would want to do the same for you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And the final question from the chat is, an individual asked, they're concerned about whether there would be adequate funding to manage homeless encampments, and specifically ask about the sheriff. And I know there are other entities, and specifically, kind of what is your plan and how would you manage this human and safety concern, which is a very pressing one in Topanga?
Absolutely. This is the number one issue that I have heard no matter where I go. It is one of the primary motivators for me to have gotten into this race, because we in my community have developed a plan that has about an 80% success rate, getting people off the streets into housing services or both. About 4 years ago, my community was even frustrated then at the magnitude of homelessness that we saw happening, not only in our own community, but in the broader region. And so we invited the county in for a special study session with our council to basically ask, what weren't we doing? What weren't we getting right? And what more did we need to be doing? And the short answer they gave us, after the very long meeting we had was, that basically we were moving in the right direction, that they needed to catch up to us in terms of what they were doing. And 4 years later, there are still things that they're not doing that we've seen deliver success. So I actually have a plan to address homelessness. I have experience that has led to success. And what we do is we have street teams that go out every day of the week to meet people where they are, to connect them with the services that the county or the city provides. So that means providing them with transportation, having someone actually work with them to get into these services, get them into mental health treatment or addiction recovery, if that is an issue that's preventing them from having stabilized housing. And making sure that, of course, housing is provided not just on a temporary basis, but on a longer term basis that's permanent, supportive with wraparound services. And we work with social service agencies that also contract with the county. As we've given them more funding, they have been able to staff up and address the emergency that we've seen in our community. And I think that's what the county needs to be doing more of, rather than relying on hiring in staff into the county. We need to work with our social service agencies that are already trusted in our communities, that know the uniqueness of each neighborhood and can provide those services reliably. They often hire, in our city anyway, we've seen that they hire people who themselves were unhoused. So they have lived experience of having gone through some of these programs, and that helps to develop a trust as well to get people off the streets and into housing services and care. Yes, we have also worked with the Sheriff's Department. In our city's case, I helped our city get author a contract that is now available to every community throughout the county to have mental evaluation team with the Sheriff's Department. And that is a clinically trained social worker who is paired with a deputy to go out on calls for service, whether it's a mental health crisis like a 5150 call or homelessness. So we lead with somebody who can help diagnose on the spot and get someone into care rather than jailing them simply for being unhoused. We don't want anyone to be a danger to themselves or others. So of course, there are times where a deputy does need to be involved in those issues, and we very much have invested in that and supported that. And like I said, I authored the contract to have a dedicated team in our city, but we need to expand the availability of those teams to make sure that they're addressing those needs in every community. And so I have experience doing that, and I want to make sure that those resources are provided to you directly in your community in Topanga.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Elisa. Oh my God, you win an award for squeezing in 3 questions in record time. I did want to follow up on that issue just really quickly, because I think it's important and pertinent where we are.
It is.
And given what's going on tonight with the helicopters. So Councilwoman Horvath, one of the things with the encampments in our areas on red flag days, high wind days, high risk days, we need there to be a sort of greater sense of urgency with targeting certain people and targeting them in terms of helping them get to safety, helping them access those emergency shelters in a priority basis. How can we do that? I mean, as I believe you know, and I've mentioned a couple of times, LASA doesn't really come out to our area. We rely on the Sheriff's host team and volunteers to reach those unhoused people, whether they're in encampments or RVs or what have you. And I was wondering how you think you might be able to move the needle on getting people out of getting the unhoused out of these dangerous areas on particularly high risk days. I know that the county is working on like a sort of a research study, like a 90-day finding study on RVs, maybe safe parking for RVs. That might be part of the solution, but I'm interested to hear what you think about how we could sort of prioritize these people in these high risk areas and get them into shelters same day, next day, and just, have everybody be safe.
Absolutely. So specific to the concern about fire safety, I want to address that part first and then go a little bit more broadly. I'm aware that the county fire department is implementing the Zone Haven evacuation plan that helps to work with communities to have pre-designated evacuation routes, as well as repopulation plans and training through LA County and law enforcement. So in a fire safety issue, whether it's specifically with homeless individuals or people who are in the community who have to be evacuated and then brought back in, I know that they're already working on that, as well as investments in the computer-aided dispatch center upgrades and making sure that we increase dispatchers to increase staffing. My understanding is that their staffing has been the same for the past 25 years. So I think we need to take a look at that to make sure that the response that's needed on those emergency days actually is urgent and shows up in the time that you need. But more broadly, to your question specifically about how response can happen, we should have dedicated street teams that go out in your neighborhood, whether they need to be paired with law enforcement or whether they should be paired with someone from the fire department. We can co-locate those services in existing locations, whether it's at the existing stations, at the sheriff or fire stations, or at a place in the community that is pre-designated. So that way these services do not have to come from hours away. And so when the calls for service come in, they have to travel long distances. I think also helping to provide local training for a time of emergency is something that we should also invest in. And I know you already have a fabulous safety response team. I listened in on the task forces meeting the other day. I am thoroughly impressed at how you all are actively engaged and making sure that you are prepared and taking action yourselves proactively. And I want to make sure that the county meets you in that proactivity with the resources that you need and the service providers to make sure that people are getting connected and out of your communities and into safety.
Wonderful. I had to unmute myself. Okay. All right, take a breather for a second there. We're gonna now move to Jaspreet. Jaspreet, I would like you to ask your question and then a question perhaps from the Q&A that you've received during the session.
Sure. Councilwoman, my question to you is the CDC is promoting ways that schools can promote COVID-19 vaccines for young children. That it is safe to get them at the same time as other immunizations. Come July 2023, should the COVID vaccine become a mandate for schools, what is your message to the parents who are concerned about long-term effects?
Yeah, I've certainly heard from a number of parents about their concerns with regard to vaccines. And, it's especially when it's one thing when it's you and you're an adult and you can make your own informed decision. It's another thing when we're talking about children. And of course, we want them to be safe because we know our schools can often become places where those colds are passed around very quickly and other issues, but we want to make sure our kids are safe. And so I want to make sure that our public health department is fully understanding of the guidance that's coming not only from the CDC, but from their expertise as well, that we're listening to the concerns of parents. So we make sure that we're helping to bring people into the conversation, that we're providing resources that don't prevent our children from getting access to education, and that we do move forward in administering vaccines safely, but also helping to support families who have questions. I don't think it's wrong to ask questions. I don't think it's wrong to, this is all very new for folks, but it's also important that we keep our kids safe and that our schools and our teachers and everybody who's working at these schools are safe too. And so bringing people into a conversation rather than just kind of having a mandate and that's it, and we're not going to talk about it, I think is where people got really frustrated. And I know during a time of crisis, we try to act quickly because we want to keep people safe. But as we continue to live with COVID, we know that this is no longer a time where we might be able to get rid of it. We're now going to have to live with it. We have to make sure that we're having conversations so people can be informed.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So I will ask a question from the chat. We have many questions related to fire and water shortage. So this question is from Jim Wooden. We are asked to practice fire abatement and create defensible space. Right behind my house on Waveview Drive is the state park, Trippett Ranch, and it is full of fuel and extreme fire hazard. Why can't the state park take responsibility for their lands and the fire hazards it creates?
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. I know I've spoken again with again on that issue with the fire department about how they're called in to respond, that CAL FIRE dispatches to them, but they don't necessarily always follow up with the resources and support that are needed locally on the ground. Specifically to the issues of, I think there are some unattended to fracking wells. We need to make sure that people with the expertise who have worked in those wells become the people who are the keepers of capping and keeping those wells safe, so we're not creating issues for in the community and for their health concerns. And I think this is a way that we can move forward, not only in your neighborhoods, but throughout LA County, to move towards green jobs, to close up these wells and to make sure that we are keeping people healthy and safe. You know, my opponent had the opportunity to shut down Aliso Canyon to protect residents in Porter Ranch and many times voted against it. He had the opportunity to implement setbacks on oil wells several times, and it was finally passed this year. He cast a vote in favor of it, but after all of the votes that were required for it to pass had already come in. And so environmental organizations on the ground saw what was going on there. And, you know, that's a difference, I think, between the two of us. We need somebody who's prepared to lead on these issues, not just finally cast the right vote after the hard work has been done by the people who are fighting for a different kind of policy and a different kind of environmentally safe future. When it comes to the state parks generally, we need to make sure that we're working with the park rangers on safety issues. And so I've already begun those conversations to make sure that their response to our parks is increased and coordinated with us in LA County. And so I think making sure that we're working with our state agencies is incredibly important.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Jessry, and then I'll.
Did you want me to continue with any more
No, you know, I
questions?
want to make sure I get Ryan in, and Lindsay's time is now rapidly closing. You know, 5 minutes ago, it seemed like we had forever, and now it seems like, oh my God. Okay, so I just wanted to just say one quick response there. I will say, yeah, Lindsay, Councilwoman Horvath, please roll up your sleeves, because I got to tell you, the state parks, this issue is a long running one. And when it comes to brush clearance, there really is a lot of back and forth butting heads with, you know, whether they have to do it, where they have to do it, getting them to do it, or letting the community do it in an easier way than currently exists. So that is an issue that's going to really have to be confronted quickly and with determination when you get on board. It's one of those agency relationships that we need the county to help us go to bat on.
Absolutely. And your experience is going to inform how I can be your partner on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to make sure Ryan Ulyate, who is a partner, one of the Firewise committee members who helped us get that Firewise designation, and as was TCEP and Arson Watch and all the other great emergency preparedness groups in the canyon. But Ryan has really been very instrumental in leading that charge. So Ryan, fire away.
Well, good pun. Councilwoman Horvath, thank you for joining us. Hey, we've been very proactive in Topanga in becoming resilient to wildfire. We're taking steps to harden our homes and create defensible space. And we, as Carrie just mentioned, we have this Firewise designation, which is a recognition of the efforts we put in over the years. And it really actually translates to lower fire insurance costs. So it's a really great thing for the community. We want to keep it up. And we found that home hardening has really been one of the most effective things we can do. There are now funds available for homeowners to make these changes. Through the California legislature, there's bills like SB 85 and AB 79. I guess my question is, how can we better coordinate with the government, and how can citizens, and what should citizens do to adapt to climate change and the reality of more frequent wildfires? As a supervisor, can you help us do that and maybe access some funds that we could use to harden our homes further?
Absolutely. I know that that Firewise designation is incredibly important, and your experience can help to inform the broader region. I think pilot programs that show the kinds of steps that we can take more broadly when we invest in them, I think is exactly where I would like to go. And I would love to work with you in identifying how those programs can work in Topanga. And so then they can, be expanded more broadly. You mentioned the home hardening issue, and that's one area where we need to get you additional investment, but we also need to help on the insurance cost issue. And I know that there was legislation legislation that was recently passed.
Yes.
Again, we know that it's great when bills pass. Hooray! We want to celebrate those, but the devil's in the details, and more importantly, in the implementation. And coming from local government, that's what I have seen. So I'm prepared to have someone in my office work with you to be the expert in the office to navigate how you apply for those funds, how you work to make sure that that the services and the savings that are supposed to be provided through this recently passed legislation, you're actually realizing in your homes and in your neighborhoods. And so making sure that we have somebody who is familiar with that is one way to make sure that we have that directly in our office, not just sort of giving you a number in the state and crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. Yes, I will absolutely be your partner in that. I saw during COVID when the state said, oh, here, fill out an application for this rental assistance, and people sent it in and it was a Word doc instead of a PDF, and it got rejected. Or when people are still on a waiting list for unemployment services in the state, they are still waiting to get their funding. We just can't have that. We need to have a more efficient response, especially when it comes to your safety.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. Okay, Lindsay, we're going to try to squeeze in one more question. Cecily, are you there? Do you want to ask your question?
Yes,
And
I am.
Awesome. I heard from the TCC, the community center, they want to make sure that they get mentioned too.
Yes, no, understood. Yeah, so hi, Lindsay. We're so grateful that you're on with us. I'm sort of asking the question about our local connectivity around our nonprofits.
Oh, yes.
Because, as you know, we're unincorporated and our high tax dollars don't really fund any civic resources for us. So we really need a direct line to your office as our de facto mayor. And our local nonprofits are really connected through our public work and service. Our local community club, our composting efforts, our farmers market, schools, libraries, all these, our sages, all of us work together, but we need direct funding. So far, it's been, discretionary funds, very small dollars, but can you imagine like larger grants going to fund some of these local efforts that we really need in our, outlying community?
Absolutely. And I would love to work with you to see where you would prioritize the funding need in your local nonprofits. I know in our community, our prioritization, the reason a lot of the services that some of our community members rely on don't exist within our city's boundary is just because of the cost of rent. And so that's something that we've worked on to try and designate spaces within our community for social service agencies to have representation and space where people can actually access them in our city. So I want to know, I want to have a better understanding of what all the needs are and where the gaps in service are coming in. But yes, absolutely. We have to support our local nonprofits, not only in the services that they provide, like you had mentioned in composting or libraries, but also in the community building that they do. This is what makes a community special. It's how people come together. And our nonprofits are often, the facilitators of that connection. So we have to make sure they have the resources to thrive, that they are reaching you in your community, that they are aware of what is unique and special, and addressing the services that you need in that way.
Yay. Okay. Well, that's music to my ears. Thank you. Sorry, Cecily, to jump in. Okay. So we are out of time, but I think you hit just several critical points. And I think the community now is far better off for having heard from both candidates and getting a really good idea of what you two are about. So I'd like it, Councilwoman Horvath, if you could summarize some key points, maybe a minute or two, and then we will close out. We'll say a couple words about the town council and then say goodnight.
I would be happy to, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you tonight. For any questions that we didn't cover, my telephone number is 323-632-7530, 323-632-7530. And my email, I will put, can you see the chat if I put it in the chat? Okay, I'll do that. So that way I don't have to spell it out because that's super annoying. But that way you'll have it and we can make sure to stay in touch with each other. I really appreciate the opportunity to have you ask questions, but more importantly, to be in dialogue with you. I know that for some of us, we're continuing a conversation. For some of us, it's just beginning, but I hope that you, if you've taken anything away from what I've said tonight, my deepest desire is to be a servant to your community, to work as a partner with you, to realize what it is you need to keep Topanga special and to keep it thriving. I have a commitment to reducing our and significantly addressing our homelessness crisis with a plan that actually has delivered results. I want to work with you to keep your community safe, to make sure that our sheriff and fire have the resources they need, but also that we have the social services and whether they be nonprofits in your community or county services that come into your community, to make sure you have all of the resources you need in Topanga to serve people of all ages. You know, I want to make sure that we continue to protect our environment and that we fight and have somebody in the seat who is a climate champion, not somebody who is going to wait for others to lead. And, you know, I know that my opponent can talk a good game in a lot of different ways. He does come from Sacramento and has a lot of experience there. But, you know, the climate, like I said earlier, the California environmental voters chose me. He often misrepresents his record on with them and in their scorecard. He actually has a failing record of 69% with them. We need somebody who's not just passing, but somebody who's fighting with and for you to make sure that we're protecting our environment, that we're leading in these issues and taking seriously the impact of climate change that we're seeing in your neighborhoods in very unique and important ways. We have to make sure that this is a time where people are working together. I have a unique experience building coalitions, that has led to the endorsement not only of 4 sitting supervisors, which means I will have folks on the board who are ready to work with me to get things done, but also leaders for this area who have long served, like State Senator Fran Pavley, who has been a champion not just in our state, but for the entire country in leading legislation. I'm so grateful that these leaders and over 100 local and elected officials have endorsed me in this race. I'm very proud of those local endorsements because each community needs to lead itself. I am running not to be your savior, but to be your partner and your ally in doing the work in LA County and bridging that gap in service that can sometimes exist from a very big bureaucracy that the county is to your very local neighborhoods. I want to make sure that I am that liaison because I will be your de facto mayor. Good news, I've been mayor twice in a community, and I know intimately how important it is that you have accessibility and responsiveness from our office. I've learned from Supervisor Yaroslavsky how he was able to address that. And Susan, I see you here. I know you have a lot of experience with that too. But Tessa is supporting me as well, and Supervisor Kuehl's office knows well that the special, what makes Topanga special is worth fighting for. And so that's what I intend to do. I intend to fight for you in this seat. And I am incredibly grateful for you welcoming me into your community so I can learn more and fight harder for you. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you, Councilmember Horvath. Thank you for coming out. We are incredibly grateful that you've made not 1, not 2, but at least 3 trips out to Topanga.
And I'm going to be there again this weekend. If you didn't get enough today or previously, please email us and we'll make sure you get the information where we're going to be this weekend so you can join us. And I think a few of my friends from the fire department are wanting to join so they can also make sure to answer your questions because they know that Topanga has, very specific questions that they need addressed. So they said, why don't we take the opportunity to come and talk? I said, okay, that'd be great. So just know that at least a few folks are looking to come.
Terrific. Yeah, no, we are. Topangans are an incredibly special group. We're a demanding bunch. We sure as heck are, but we give as good as we get, and we are incredibly appreciative and loving, and we will give back in spades.
And I want to say to that too, demanding is good. I want a community that's engaged. You're a better community when you're engaged. When we just leave government to make all the decisions by itself without your input, things don't go right. So I'm really thrilled about working with all of you. Like I said, that task force meeting was so inspiring. I'm like, I love these people. You're directly engaged and involved and taking responsibility and taking charge. And I just love that. So that makes me want to work even harder for you.
Thank you. And yes, a special shout out to James for running that meeting, James Grasso. Okay, so I want to go ahead and just kind of want to wind it down with Stacy's slide. Stacy, are you still with me? Stacy, oh, good. Stacy is a long-term president of the Topanga Town Council, and finally said, you know, she needs a couple of years to herself for once, but she really knows this community. She's put her heart, soul, every breath into this place, and I really would like her to describe what the town council has done over the years, what it continues to aspire to do, and how we hope to work with our next supervisor. Thank you. Go ahead, Stace.
Thanks everybody for coming, our candidates and our panelists for participating, and attendees for all your wonderful questions in the chat, which those that didn't get addressed here can get addressed later. So be following up. We're going to be posting a lot of information on your community website, which is called onetopanga.com. So be just know that there is a lot of information to give to the community, and a lot of information that comes from the community back to us. The town council was made for that exact purpose, and we were founded about 45 years ago. I think this is our 45th anniversary actually this year, and we're an all volunteer. We're not a government organization. We are all volunteers as a nonprofit organization that was founded with the main purpose is to act as a liaison between the county and the state government representatives and our community, both residents and businesses. And then the second purpose was to create a forum like tonight, create forums for our community to be able to reach out and talk about their concerns, and for us to get them connected to the most expeditious way of finding a solution. So that's what the town council is about. We meet on the second Wednesday of most months. We will not meet in December, but we will meet in November. And we encourage everybody to come. Right now we're meeting via Zoom, and hopefully in the new year we'll be able to get back to more person-to-person kind of format, but for now we're in Zoom. So if you would like to get the One Topanga newsletter that we send out once a month that has lots of information that affects the community, or you want to come to a town council meeting, or you just want to say hi or want to share some of your thoughts and your concerns, please do so. And you can email us at contact@topangatown.council.org. We also have a voicemail that you can leave a long-winded message if you prefer, and that's at 310-455-3001. So again, thanks for everybody for coming and helping to support our Topanga community so that we can make it a better place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. And I just want to say again, Stacy Sledge, long-term president of the Topanga Town Council, now treasurer, board member, and trying to get a few days of peace every now and again. But she's an inspiration and a mentor to the next generation of, people who want to provide a service to this community. And that is the spirit with which she has run the town council, the spirit of service. So thank you, Stacy. All right, and thank you to everybody else for winding it down. I want to thank our candidates, our panelists, and all the residents, and all the friends of Topanga who came out tonight. You're the best, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.